and we keep it in English. I know you want to switch in French for some of the messages you wanted to give, but Qualcomm defines itself as a wireless innovation company. Obviously, you are 30 years old. You have invested $60 billion over the history, over your history in the wireless technology. You aim to solve problem of communications. You have a licensing model and a cheap sales model as well. Obviously, you are positioned on the very competitive chipset market. You define yourself as a global leader in 3G, 5G, and 5G now, 4G. Mm-hmm. So we know that 5G is going to allow more uses in terms of stream video, audio, and all those new uses. But recently, and today, we've learned that France is again delaying this auctions sales of spectrum for the 5G. So is France still out of the 5G race?
We hope not. So I'll answer this question in French because it's for France, right? And then we'll switch to English. Donc on n'espère pas. En fait, donc la ministre a annoncé que la procédure va être lancée d'ici quelques jours. J'espère qu'on va tenir le calendrier annoncé par le gouvernement lors de lancement de la feuille de route. Nous, on travaille avec les opérateurs au niveau global, avec des pays en Asie, en Europe et bien sûr aux États-Unis. On a 9 pays européens qui ont lancé la 5G commercialement. La Chine a lancé, la Corée aussi, les États-Unis. Les chiffres qui viennent de Corée et de la Chine sont impressionnants. On est encore dans les temps, si on lance donc on lance la procédure, on se lance en 2020. C'est une question de compétitivité. Juste un chiffre, en fait, quand même. On a lancé une étude sur l'impact économique de la 5G. Pour le moment, en fait, la France reste dans le peloton de tête en Europe, avec l'Angleterre et l'Allemagne. Environ en 2035, on aurait à peu près 3,9 à 4% des revenus et de la chaîne de valeur CAPEX, OPEX, 5G dans le monde.
So back to English. For the EU, I just said that you are in charge of public policies and government affairs. So what should be done to accelerate the 5G adoption within the EU? How can we foster innovation, and what kind of policies are you expecting on the European level to accelerate maybe the infrastructure provided by Qualcomm?
That's a great question. So what I would say is that 2020 will be a very critical year for 5G adoption. So I was giving the Asia and how things are accelerating there. You should know that by the end of the year, we'll have in China around 130,000 base stations. So that's network transmitters. In Korea, we have 90,000 today. You have 3.5 million users in Korea. Our expectation that 5G devices in China will reach 110 million in 2020. This is the scale we're talking about. So coming to Europe, I think what's key is to get spectrum auctions, award, licensing done as soon as possible. In the various frequency bands, so 3.6 gigahertz, but also 700 megahertz, that's the low band. In France, we have done that, by the way. And it's the 5G band, so we can accelerate the rollout of 5G. Same also for 26 gigahertz, le bac à sable, that the minister has been talking about. We need to work on that one too. So accelerate 5G spectrum award, then really get into a rollout of 5G through incentivizing, fostering investment by operators, but also some public-private investment models. The Commission is helping with investment funds with 5G corridors to connect countries with 5G and help accelerate automotive connectivity, 5G connectivity. And finally, I would say, very important, getting 5G action plans per country. So getting partnerships together, because 5G is not about just our smartphones and getting better experiences, but these are manufacturing, railway operators, automotive. It's really a significant transformation of our economy. So we need to get that done, getting everybody together through partnerships.
What is the killer application if we talk about 5G? In terms of uses, what would be the first killer application?
So let me first start by saying, yeah, 5G, we've talked about a bit, but that's more data. You and I will be using our smartphone and enjoying way better services, new services like cloud super apps, like apps in the cloud with streaming. You will get better videos. Industries will enjoy connectivity with more reliability for automotive, energy, smart cities, and then connecting billions and billions of IoT, Internet of Things. That's the promise, right? And the journey is here. We're starting it now. It will take a decade. It will be transformative. What's the killer application for me now in Europe? Coverage. So 2020, the killer application is to get 5G coverage out so we can scale up 5G adoption.
We'd like to understand what does the EU, so not maybe France, because we have a specific delay or subject in France, but what does EU and Europe represent for a US company such as Qualcomm? Is it a first market, or do you are still focusing on other territories? We'll talk about it later, but...
That's another great question. Actually, today, if you look at global companies, we operate globally. And we look at regions who are innovating, bringing spectrum out, building the networks, having industrial players. Europe is a key region, and I wouldn't call it market. It's really a key region for a number of reasons. The first one is that we have innovative operators who are ready to make transformation in terms of industrial initiatives. It depends on countries too, but we have strong operators. Number two, we have significantly innovative industrial players. If you look at the top 40 industrial players in the world, 30% of those are in Europe. So 5G for industries in Europe. Automotive, significant brands and auto players in Europe. And finally, I would say you have a standardization system in Europe that's significant with ETSI, and what's happening right now is that you need to build a global standard. So go and invest in standard. We have this standardization system here, and then we can scale up globally. To give you also, just to finish on this one, how important Europe is for Qualcomm in terms of engineering skills. So we're expanding in Europe. If you look on AI, 5G chips, including R&D and production, where we have expanded recently in September up to 3,500 employees to drive that innovation from here in Europe.
That would be maybe one of the work you have with the EU. It's working on standard. I'm guessing that you have an implication on those questions in terms of lobbying and working on those standards for 5G in Brussels.
The standard? Yes, I mean, I call it advocacy, because the important thing is to explain your point of view and get things done. And mostly, Europe is becoming a regulatory continent. Innovating in regulation too, and exporting. So you need to be here, and you need to play by the book, and also be transparent, and mostly be a partner to others, listen, engage, and do things well.
One last minute for final question before welcoming our next guest. How do you visualize the alliances of tomorrow? We've been ruled for many, many years by this logic that the winners take it all. We've been talking about the infrastructure just before, but how do you plan to compete? Is it against Chinese giants, new partners in Europe to compete against those Asian giants? And how do you plan to build your alliances of tomorrow to compete?
So the mobile market has always been a very competitive market. We've seen companies appearing, companies disappearing. But what's really important from our perspective is to continue to innovate, create partnerships globally, and also preserve the standardization system that we've built, like having one 5G technology that's enabled everywhere across the world. That's something that we didn't see in 3G. We started seeing it in 4G, but there was a split between LTE and WiMAX. But in 5G, we're making it happen, and we need to keep that happening. So if you look at alliances, for example, I would say what we're doing today with the automotive industry in Europe, what we're doing with the industrial players, if you look in France, we've, on millimeter waves, the trials that RCEP and the government have put together, we've been working with SNCF, the French radio operator. So we need to expand the partnership, and it's not like, yes, it's competition, but it's mostly about partnerships.
Beyond partnerships, you don't see a polarization between maybe an Asian center and another US power? Obviously, we can talk about the Trump trade agreements, but don't you see this polarization between maybe two areas, two giants?
So we're watching, obviously, the situation closely and through the news too. We do hope actually that the US and China will reach an agreement that's beneficial to both, and will move forward. We're in a global ecosystem. We're working with Chinese players and very constructively with Europeans, as I said, in a very hand in hand. So again, I would say we're operating in a global ecosystem, and that we see that continuing.
Thank you very much, Wassim CHOURBAJI, for this speech. Thank you.